Hey everybody, we're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. He's Jason, I'm Chucky for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends, powered by STN Sports, and it's Final Four weekend. Not only for the guys, but for the girls as well. It's been a great tournament, especially for you guys, as it's been kind of dominated by favorites so far. But it's an exciting time of year for us, Jay.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. The games have been very good. Getting some kind of non-number one seeds in there and watching, Chucky's sleeper was NC State pulling in there with the 11 seed, and obviously Alabama, a surprise out of the West as the 4 seed. And not only that, but on the women's side, it's amazing that we talk about UConn being the number 1 seed in the men's, and the UConn women are in the Final Four. And the bigger shocker, obviously, on the NC State side of things, is we watch both Wolfpack teams representing themselves in the Final Four. So great weekend of basketball, and obviously as much as we talk about the men, the women have kind of a little bit overshadowed, and we'll say, I don't know if it's the whole women, but it sure is about Caitlin Clark and what Iowa has done, and the incredible viewing that they got in the LSU and the Iowa game. It was our match of the day on that day, and we got a lot of handle, a lot of interest in the game, a lot of props on Caitlin Clark. So as we'll go through here, you'll see some of the great offerings we have as we focus a little bit more on the women's games, with the rise in handle and definitely a rise in customer following, and a lot of our bettors betting the women's matchups.
Let's start there then. Instead of jumping into the men, let's go ahead and start with the women's. And you look at this LSU Iowa matchup. It was by far the largest wagered women's tournament game, probably the women's game ever that I can remember. Just kind of the hype, the crowd in the book, the atmosphere that day. It was followed by UConn against USC. USC was the number 1 seed. They had the freshman of the year. It was fun. I mean, everybody I talked to was watching these two women's games, and to see what Caitlin Clark would do as she had a chance for revenge against LSU and Angel Reese, who won last year against them.
Yeah, and the Reese-Clark matchup, and we put up, I think, every prop that we could possibly think of on Clark and Reese, and of course Caitlin went absolutely bananas in that game with the 3-pointers and the points, and Iowa winning the game, and the public and the bettors, they took Iowa, they took all her overs, so it was a very profitable game for the Caitlin Clark fan base.
And we talk a little bit about that revenge factor, and if you think about Caitlin Clark, I mean, it's come out that where did she want to go when she was in high school? She wanted to go to UConn. She contacted UConn, never got a call back, never got a scholarship. Actually had committed first to Notre Dame before ending up at Iowa. But this is a chance, too, to kind of say, you know what? To Connecticut, I'm going to go out here and put on a big show, too, and big numbers. And, everybody, is she the GOAT or not? I mean, winning here and getting to the national championship game, if it's against South Carolina, is going to be a really tough task. But what she's done, I think, for women's college basketball has been phenomenal. And from our side, so many games up during the course of the year, top 20 games, the future's up. And it's not just about Iowa and Caitlin Clark. It is about LSU and Angel Reese and everything South Carolina's had to do. It has just been fun this year. And to see the betting kind of change, where it was an increased handle across the board almost on a daily basis on the women's college basketball.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about the GOAT, and it's what you've done for college basketball to bring the game forward, and obviously there's been so many superstars in women's college basketball that go on to have great careers in the WNBA. But again, you talk about what she's done this year to bring and draw attention to the game with the whole breaking the points record, and obviously what she's done throughout this Final Four.
Kelsey Plum, and then Pistol Pete Maravich as well. But I think you just said it. It's the as these women then go to the WNBA. But I think when you look at, like, for our market and for the betting public, it's looking at the WNBA, the Aces, 2-time defending champs, what that has kind of, brought to the attention of the bettors here. It's not just fans, but it's just like it is for the Raiders or the Knights or the Rebels. Any team out here that's relevant, they get a tremendous backing from you guys. And that's been the cases with the Aces. And I think just the women's game alone is phenomenal at the WNBA level. And watching those 2 college games the other night, I mean, we had a huge crowd out here watching. I know we both watched the games. We were texting back and forth. It is quality basketball and phenomenal to watch.
Yeah, and we talk about specifically this UConn Iowa matchup. Again, another short favorite for Iowa. This is going to be a tough game. UConn's in the Final Four for a reason.
Again,
Paige Beckner's is absolutely fantastic. These two have been going at each other, I think, since they were young girls and growing up and playing basketball together. I looked at it from this standpoint. Caitlin Clark over/under prop on her points is 33.5. Beckner's over-under is 26.5. As we get kind of later in the week, you'll see more and more props. We've got some triple-double props up. We'll have three-pointers made props up. UConn's got a lot of weapons. Obviously, that's why they're just a short dog in this game.
They've had a lot of injuries this year, and don't forget early in the season, this wasn't a good UConn team. It's a little bit of a surprise that they're where they're at. They weren't a number 1. They were a number 3 seed.
Beckner's, again, she's averaging 42% shooting from three-point land. Edwards is another big scorer for UConn. Look for her to have a big game trying to go inside against that Iowa defense.
And I think, just going back to what we said with the popularity of the women's game, the fact that we're kicking off bookends and really talking so much about it really speaks volumes, I think, of how good the game is and how much you guys have enjoyed playing it, look for the props, and really increase that handle to a number that I don't think we've ever seen before.
Yeah, and then we talk about the South Carolina NC State game, and when you talk about South Carolina, they don't have that headline performer the way Caitlin Clark or Paige Beckner's have been for UConn and Iowa. Camelia Cardoza is one of the biggest players in women's college basketball at 6'7". She's their big center out of Brazil. She's their leading scorer, but they really go deep. They've got about 5-6 girls that are going to score in that average 10-point game. So they're really tough to defend because on any given night, they have so many different players that can kind of go off. For NC State, River Baldwin, she's 6'5", she's their senior. She's going to have to play the game of her life on the defensive side of the ball to stop Cardoza from going and having that big game at 6'7". But NC State, again, Isaiah James, she's their leading scorer, one of the best players in the country. Very, very good guard play. South Carolina has very good guard play. South Carolina is a heavy favorite in this game. NC State's a big dog both on the men's and the women's side. But you never know. Maybe there's that crazy NC State money line men, NC State money line women, UConn money line.
Wolfpack is barking, maybe. You never know.
Get something going where we get a NC State, UConn in both the men's and women's final. That would be all the stars aligning for that to happen.
Maybe look for an index of that too. See how it works out.
Again, just a great, should be great matchups on Friday and Sunday in the women's matchups, and really something to look forward to watching and betting if you can.
So now that we've kind of critiqued and broke down the women, I guess we have time to talk about the men a little bit. So let's start with, these two games, Purdue, NC State, and then UConn, Alabama. I think when you look at the point spreads, Jay, this is by far the largest point spreads for both games that I can remember in my career. I know that UConn number is awfully big. I think that's the fourth largest ever for a Final Four game. But you look at the other game, Purdue, NC State, that's almost double digits as well. I can't remember two games like this having such a big point spread. I know both UConn and Purdue number 1 seeds, but wow, those are huge numbers for the Final Four.
Yeah, and I think we'll start with the UConn matchup and just what they've done through the tournament in absolutely embarrassing teams, blowing teams out. Nothing's been close. It doesn't even feel like they've been in a competitive game. And we saw them do this last year as well. They were 6-0 on their way to winning the championship last year, covering 6-0 against the spread in that same time frame. They're 4-0. They're 4-0 against the spread, and just been dominant. And obviously we have a number 4 seed in Alabama in this matchup, so they've been pulling the upsets to get there. Mark Sears has been absolutely fantastic in this tournament run. He's a 6'1" guard. His over-under is 20.5 in the game against UConn. We see Estrada, who's a 6'3" guard. His over-under is 13.5. Grant Nelson, who we've seen kind of been their kind of leader for the last two games and pulled them out. His over-under is 9.5. But the key thing here for Grant Nelson is that he's a 6'11" kind of forward/center. He's going to have to be a big part of that game because we talk about how big that front court is for UConn. And then Griffin, the other forward/guard, 6'6". His over-under is 11.5. So a little bit of balanced scoring, but obviously Sears is the leader on the Alabama side of things. And I mentioned the fact that Sears is 6'1", and he's used to shooting over these big guards, but he's going to have some really big guards to go up against with UConn. In the fact that I'm going to go through the over/under totals on points scored for the UConn players. Again, not a single-threaded team in that they're very balanced. A lot of guys to score. Newton 16.5, Spencer 15.5, Carabon 13.5, Klingon 15.5, and Castle 11.5. So you see a lot of balanced scoring there, a lot of props you bet on these guys. But Spencer 6'4", Castle 6'6", Newton 6'5", Caravan 6'8". So they've got some guard play that's going to be a lot bigger and make Mark Sears have to shoot those three-pointers from either a little bit more distance or put a little bit more arc on the ball. We'll see if that affects his game. And he's going to have a premier game from that three-point shooting line to be able to beat this UConn team. And then we talk about Donovan Klingen, who's been absolutely amazing. 7'2", been the kind of leading guy for UConn on the inside. And if these games go the way that the point spreads are telling us they're going to go, we're going to have UConn a 12-point favorite facing Purdue in the final, who's a 9.5-point favorite. But man, it'd be awesome to see the Klingen 7'2" versus the Edey 7'4" matchup of these two guys, and maybe somebody that can finally stop Edey on the inside. Because on the flip side of things here, Purdue, we're a 9.5-point favorite. Now you are talking about the Cinderella NC State getting through that bracket, pulling some upsets. We did talk about some potential maybe gifts or softer games that they had with being able to play Oakland, being able to play Duke. He was able to pull the upside of Houston. So they didn't have to play that number 1 or that number 2 seed on their path to get there. But Edey has been just such a monster in that they're 4-0. They're 4-0 against the point spread. They really kind of embarrassed Tennessee in this last matchup. Edey went absolutely off for 40 points. The offensive rebound was absolutely exceptional for the Purdue team. Braden Smith's been really, really good. His assists he had 15 assists against Gonzaga in that matchup. The over-under points for Edey is 25.5. Over-under rebounds is 13.5. On the flip side of it, when I look at the NC State team and what they're going to have to do differently than what everybody else has done is how do they stop Edey. So they got to go to Mohamed Diarra, who's their 6'10" kind of center, who's a guy that kind of plays middle minutes, and he's kind of skinny, so we'll see if he can body up to be able to kind of get into Edey and not let Edey bang him around in that post. And then we talk about a skinny Diarra to the exact opposite in DJ Burns. Who's a big-bodied guy, but I don't know if what we're going to see on the defensive side of things, if they're going to want to put Burns on Edey, because I think they're going to want to stay out of foul trouble.
I think it'll be a combination, though. They're going to, he is a big body that can prevent Edey from kind of using that signature move, that little one-handed hook. He can kind of keep him off, out of the paint a little bit, and then you look at the R. I think he'll rotate in it.
What I want to see them do is get it down to Burns on the inside and force Edey to play some defense and have to work on the defensive side so maybe it takes away from his offensive game. And then obviously, if you're an NC State fan, you're going to be cheering for the DJ brothers, DJ Horn, DJ Burns. Those are their two scorers. Those are the guys that you want to see have a big game. And there's still Middlebrooks, who's also a 6'10" kind of forward senior. So they do have that kind of three-headed monster. We saw Tennessee kind of throw 3 guys at Edey, got in a lot of foul trouble. Nobody was effective. They can throw Burns, Diarra, and Middlebrooks from an NC State side at that Purdue Edey to try and maybe slow him down. But I'm hoping that they can work him on both sides of the court. But at the end of the day, to see a UConn Purdue matchup, it was the way that we're looking.
Right.
It does kind of have a national championship feel of the player of the year, potentially 2-time player of the year in Edey going up against what is this just absolutely dominant UConn team. And at no point in time, people keep asking me, what do I think of the matchups? And I had UConn in my bracket to win it all. They're the only Final Four team I had left, but I had them to win it all for a reason. This team is an absolute freight train. The coaching, the players, the balance. They've actually not had a good shooting tournament from three-point land. They've been dominating on the inside. In looking at these 4 teams that are left, I think it's really, really difficult to say that there's an upset coming. UConn's been that dominant. I do think there's a little bit of disagreement. Some people think they're going to be about a 4 to a 4.5 point favorite over Purdue if Purdue's able to come.
No chance.
I think the game is closer to 6.5, 7. But again, I have a little bit more bias to what UConn's done through this tournament. And believe me, I think we're going to be cheering for a Crimson Tide and a Wolfpack at least to cover in both of these matchups, as I think we're going to see a lot of Purdue to UConn money.
I mean, you definitely covered a lot for both games statistically, and I think you look at UConn, 10 straight covers going back to last year, but it's their margin of victory. It's 27.8 points. I mean, that is crazy. You're winning by almost 30 points a game
Well,
over that stretch.
That goes to their balance.
Right.
In that you have 5 guys on the floor, somebody gets in foul trouble or somebody needs rest, you're bringing in a 6th, a 7th, and 8th guy that can also score.
It's not just balance. It's we do not take our foot off the gas. You see a lot of schools, when you're up double digits, the game's out of hand, you're going to go ahead and empty the bench. But even when they do that, there's guys that are taking threes. They're driving to the hoop. They're not taking the shot clock down. I mean, it's a team that just doesn't take their foot off the gas. I think since 1967, when you had UCLA win 67-73, and then 2007 and 8 Florida repeat, you have not had a repeat champion. So UConn has an opportunity to do that here this year.
And there's some historical stuff to this too. The run that they made last year, the run that they're making this year, you start to have the argument: is this one of the greatest college basketball teams? And what Hurley's done. So I mean, they know that.
Without a household name, though.
They're feeling it. They have this gift, and they know what they're looking to establish in the history of college basketball.
Well, I mean, these two schools did play early last year, in a neutral site game in Portland. The Huskies won 82-67, but the score was tied 52-all with 8:55 to go in the game before, guess what? They went on a 30-15 run. 30 seems to be the magical number for them. So it's just.
Well, are you making reference to the 23-23 tied against the Illini, and then a 30-0
run? Absolutely.
A 30-0 run to end the half and start the half against an Illinois team that a lot of people
we both thought that number was big.
That was the chance,
right? Yeah. This will be the Crimson Tide's first trip to the Final Four, while it's UConn's 7th trip. UConn is 5-1 in their previous 6, and again, they're looking to be back-to-back champions for the first time since 2006-07, when it was the Florida Gators. Just going back to what you talked about a little bit with Purdue and the Wolfpack. Wolfpack 9-for-9 in the postseason, including the ACC and NCAA tournament, but they're on fire. They are 7-0 against the number in the role of a dog. And the number's gone up here from 11 to 12, might go up a little bit higher. But you think about the iconic run of the 1983 Jimmy Valvano NC State Wolfpack. And this Wolfpack team, they just look like they're having fun. They weren't even a bubble team in the NCAA tournament. They were a team that was seeded 10th. Their coach was rumored to maybe be, on the hot seat, or was on the hot seat. They've just gone through that tournament. They've gone through games here. They look phenomenal. They're having fun. They've got some bigs, I think, that can match up to Edey, but you're going to need the DJ brothers to really play well.
Yeah, and I like them. I like them as a dog in this game. I don't know about the money line, but I do think Purdue's played some ugly games. The win over Tennessee, I thought Tennessee played really bad. I thought Rick Barnes, again, we talked about the Rick Barnes struggle in the NCAA tournament, but I thought he really did it again. There were 3 stretches in that game, 2 stretches of 5 minutes and 1 stretch of 4 minutes where Tennessee failed to score. So 14 minutes of game time that they don't score. You can't just have those type of lapses. Connect was absolutely amazing. He was trying to go head-to-head with Edey in that scoring, but really Ziegler and none of the other volunteers did anything to help. So if you can get a team game, if you can get a couple guys, if you can get the DJ brothers to play a good game, I think NC State can stay in this game and try and steal it. The point spread is telling you otherwise with the big spread, but I think that's just because of Purdue's dominance and what Edey has to offer. But if there's any game where I think the upset can happen, it would be NC State, because I'm really struggling to see the Bama pulling the upset.
I agree with you, and I think when you look at this game, I think the other game you're going to see that number continue to tick up. I see no reason why the bettors who have cashed for 2 straight years, you guys are going to back off of UConn. But when you look at Purdue, I think this number is going to come down. I think 9.5 is a big number. And although Purdue has covered all 4 games in the tournament so far, guess what? 3 of those 4 games have gone under. I think that really favors an NC State team, that if they can stay close and they've got their bigs who can kind of neutralize Edey a little bit, although he's been a one-man wrecking crew, that total of 146.5 might be tough to achieve unless Purdue is just having their way on the offensive side of the ball.
The other big thing that when you look at these games is, remember, we're moving all the way out to Arizona. So none of these 4 teams have a distinct advantage of moving the games out west and being in Arizona. Purdue got to play a lot of their games in that kind of Midwest region. I believe they were in Detroit for the kind of the semifinal, where they had the whole crowd, 75% of that crowd.
Oh, that'll be the case again, though.
75% of that crowd was a heavy Purdue crowd. So we'll see as we move out west what the crowds are going to be like. Again, and moving to the big arena and the backdrop. There has been some sharp play on the unders. in both of these games. Obviously, Alabama, high-scoring team, one of the highest-scoring teams in the country, and UConn's ability to play defense. Potentially, UConn might want not to run with this Alabama team and give them most possessions and play more of a half-point game. So there has been a little bit more under money on the UConn-Alabama matchup, and the other game as well, again, with some under money.
I think that's been kind of Purdue's mantra so far in the tournament. 3 of those 4 games have gone under. So check out the app for all the props for both the men's and women's games. And before
as I said, I was giving you guys the point totals. There's rebound totals,
right.
There's assist totals, there's triple doubles, there's race to 10, race to 20, race to 30. I mean, if you can think of it, check out the app. That prop's probably available on the March Madness games. Not only the men's, but the women's. We're continuing to put up the more and more props on the women's matchups as well.
One last thing too on college hoops is last man standing. The prize pool was $59,975. That's an aggregate payout. So if there's multiple guests tied, they would split that prize pool. There's 30 contestants left, which is a big number. My guess is there'll be a lot of you guys on UConn in this matchup. The sheets are out now. I think John's actually put them on the app as well, so you guys can kind of check it out or tweeted them out. So 2 games right now left, but we'll see with 2 double-digit favorites.
And having 30 people left in last man standing kind of speaks to how the tournament's gone and
right.
The public betting aspect. Chucky made mention to it at the beginning of the segment. The public's doing very well. College basketball's been a profitable venue for you guys the last couple of weekends. The winners have been there for you, cashing a lot of tickets, and then you sprinkle in baseball and you sprinkle in the Dodgers and betting against the A's. And
Wait, I thought we weren't going to talk about baseball today.
Betting against the Rockies. There's been a lot of money to be made here early in the year with a combination of college basketball to baseball, and then for those of you that have been taking advantage of the Golden Knights finding their way back to some winning ways, been a lot of tickets
You're
cashed.
Just jumping so far ahead here.
A lot of tickets getting cashed on a lot of different ways.
All right.
And
I was going to come back and jump into baseball, but since you did, there isn't a lot of parity. We're normally having this discussion, and it's the toughest sport for us to beat. There's no question that our hold percentage in baseball is always much lower than it is in basketball or football. But it is the lack of parity that you've got the Dodgers and the Braves that are bet on every day. The Rockies, the A's are a bet against every day, it seems like. And you guys are cashing. I mean, we've seen some big parlays already hit. There's definitely some surprise stories. Maybe the poor start of the Astros, starting at 1-5, and then the really hot starts right now of the Tigers, Pirates, and Brewers, who are out of the gate on fire right now.
Yankees were another team. Yep. Obviously the loss of the Diamondbacks yesterday, but they started off hot. The Orioles putting up a lot of runs with a couple big wins. So you talk about that, non-balance of baseball, and we're going to continue to see it. And you talked about the hold percentage in baseball, and one of the reasons why we have a little bit less of a hold percentage in baseball is the money line splits. And we talk about offering that 10-cent money line, and what I'm talking about is when you have a team that's kind of a $1.20 favorite, the dog is going to be plus 110. And as we go up and you kind of get those straddles to a game that's $1.60, $1.70, all the way up to $2, those straddles stretch out a little bit. But if you're not at a book, if you're playing at a book that doesn't have a 10-cent baseball line, kind of up to $1.30. And so when your team's a $1.25 favorite, you should be getting plus 115 on the other side. There's several books in town that are offering that 10-cent line. There's several books in town that aren't offering that 10-cent line. So do yourself a favor. If you're playing at a book that isn't offering you a 10-cent line in baseball, especially as you look at those lower splits of those pick'em games, take a look at the app. Come on over to Station Casinos. We've got great value. We've got a great menu, and we've got that 10-cent line in baseball to make those payouts on your straight bets and your parlays even higher.
There's so many cool things on the app. It's a great time to get the app. And I know Jay touched on, too, as we leave baseball, a little bit on the Golden Knights. Knights are hot right now. They've now won 3 straight games. They're within 3 points of the Edmonton Oilers for that second spot in the Pacific. Although Edmonton has a couple of games in hand, April 10th, these two teams play in Edmonton, which might be an opportunity for the Knights to sneak into that second spot. 2 and 3 play each other in the playoffs. Could be for home ice. So check all that stuff out on the app as well.
Yeah, the guys are getting hot. Eichel seems to have really turned it up, and kind of
Hanifin scored last night.
Everybody's following behind him. And we talk about the Knights with excitement and energy, but when they win, it's not good for the book. But man, it's so great to see it. And I think it's just that we're getting back to this playoff time. And last year, we all know the incredible run that we saw the Knights make all the way to the Stanley Cup final and bringing home the cup back to town. So it's kind of, let's get back in that groove, support the Knights, get out to those games, get out to watch the games that are with us. All of our properties have the games up big on the sound. Excited to have food and beverage specials, everything going on for the Vegas Golden Knights. We're happy to host you here at Station Casinos to cheer on those Golden Knights as these games move forward into the playoffs.
That win against Vancouver might be a mini statement game too. Like, we're getting healthy. We're kind of back right now. A lot of these new players, although they've been there for a few weeks, and they're veteran players, starting to mesh a little bit better. I mean, they definitely have some offensive firepower, need to be healthy between the pipes, but hey, it's not what you do when you get in the regular season. It's just get to the postseason and see if you can turn it up a notch, which I think this team can.
And there's a lot of battles everywhere, not only in the Western Conference, the Eastern Conference. We've got about 10 games left for all these teams battling out for the playoff spots, and not only in the NHL, but it's kind of the same thing in the NBA. So we're all over the place. What a great time of year. Make sure you have the app. We've got a $50 no-worry wager for all new signups available on the app.
Match of the day.
You've got the match of the day, which is a 10% odds boost on the games that's going on. So the men's and women's games will have that 10% odds boost on the matches of the day. But between basketball and hockey and baseball and golf, we're coming up on some premier golf events. The Masters just right around the corner. We've got some great MMA events coming up. You'll see slap fighting on the app come next week.
Maybe some sumo.
We're going to have some sumo wrestling. We've got UFC 300. So really, there's no better time to make sure you have the app to look at all these prices and a lot of bets. And remember, you can do up to 12 team parlays on the app. So a lot of chances to kind of build those lottery tickets with all these sports going on. We've had a lot of big cashers over the last week. A $50 ticket to win $135,000. I think we had a $60 ticket that won $138,000. We had a $500 ticket that won $134,000, and we had several that have been under the $50,000. So a lot of big winners cashing their tickets on the app with STN Sports.
One last thing too before we leave you guys today is for you football fans. I'll put the teaser out there. It's draft season. For me, I'm a draft Nick. I know Jay is too. We talk about it all the time. I'm always bugging him. Can I put up more draft props? Can I put up more draft props? We know they're tough to beat. We know it's a information era that we're in right now, and there's a lot out there. We've put up a bunch of props already. We're going to put up some more, but it's fun to talk about because there's so much kind of going on in pro football right now. Look for more, and then in the coming weeks, we're going to come up with our mock draft as well, and we'll kind of have some fun on one of these segments as we put it out there for you guys, especially what the Raiders might do and how many quarterbacks will go in the first round.
Well, and now you got to make some major adjustments to the Houston Texans,
right,
with the big move today of acquiring Diggs from the Buffalo Bills. Leaves the Buffalo Bills with a questionable receiving core, and it really makes you think what the Texans are doing in a division where there's some maybe some vulnerability with the Jaguars, the Colts, and the Titans, that's a winnable division. With what Stroud did last year, getting Mixon, their receiving core, Houston Texans may be a team to look out for.
Bills lose two receivers, Gabe Davis to the AFC South, the Jags, and now Stephon Diggs to the AFC South Texans. So check out all this stuff. It's a great time to have the app. As Jay mentioned, all the cool features on it. Don't forget, we'll be coming up with our mock draft, some more draft props as well, and Final Four weekend. So we'll look forward to seeing you guys here, not only at Red Rock, but all of our racing sportsbook. So for Jason, I'm Chucky, Red Rock's Racing Sportsbook, for the Sports Betting Podcast, Bookends, powered by STN Sports.